Good morning, neighbors. Pull up a chair, relax, and let us think upon the Lord for a little while and sing along. That's what this song is really about. To the table. Hear the voice of love that's calling. There's a chair that waits for you, and a friend who understands everything you're going through. You keep standing at a distance in the shadow of your shame. But there's a light of hope that shines. Won't you come and take your place? So bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your sin, all your sorrow, and your sadness, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. He can see the way you care and the fears that hold your heart. But through the cross you've been forgiven. You're accepted as you are. So bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your trials, all your worries and your burdens, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. You can bring it all. You can bring it all. So come on in, take your place. There's no one who's turned away. All you sinners and all you saints, come on in and find your grace. Come on in, take your place. There's no one who's turned away. And all you sinners and all you saints, come on in and find your grace. And bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your sin, all your sorrow and your sadness, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. And you are all welcome to his table, and you're all welcome to my table. As I was singing that, I was looking down, and you can't see it, but this is my my parents' kitchen table. This is the one my dad picked out, and I use it as a desk because it's a little bit bigger. And when I sat there and started thinking, as I was singing that song, that's what I'm doing with this. I'm welcoming everyone to come sit at the the Lord's table, really, we could never all fit at this table, but in his table, it is a table that's spread for all. And if you listen to Zach Williams, his live version when he sings the song, he's singing it in a prison. He had testified, I was not living a good godly life, but the Lord has welcomed me to his table now that I've changed. And really, that's what he's asking you. When you come to a table and you're invited in, you're all invited. Come put on this garment, though, this robe of righteousness that I'm trying to give you, and come sit at this table. You need the wedding garment on to sit at the table. That's what he asks. That's what he requires to come to the table. But, throughout time, through the Great Depression, I've read a lot about that time in history. They said we may not have had much, but if someone was willing to come to the door and say, I'm starving, can you give me something to eat? They tried to bring them in and give them what little that they had, to welcome them in, to let you know there is a place for you. I'm going to treat you with respect. There is a home for you here, that you can have a little something to eat. And, if they could spare, they'd give them some clean clothes to make them feel like they are a man or a person again. And really, the Lord, that he's got the ultimate table. I'm welcoming you here to come here. You're more than welcome. Come as you are, but I want to change you, so that you can come sit at this table. A lot of people, they kind of don't like that thought, I want to change you. But, he said, there is a parable about the wedding garment. But we're not going to read that parable today. We're going to read a different one. In Luke chapter 14 and verse 7. So he told a parable to those who were invited, when he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them. So, it's a parable of the ambitious guest. So then Jesus says, when you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him. And he who invited you and him come and say to you, give place to this man. And then you begin with shame to take the lowest place. So he's saying, don't be prideful. This is Jesus' message over and over. Don't be prideful. When you come to a wedding feast, don't choose the best place. And really, he's trying to teach you a lesson. That's what a parable is. Choose the less. Because if you choose the best, you may be told to step down a few notches. But if you're lowly, then you can be lifted up. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, go up higher. Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. And so he's trying to get this through to us. Don't seek for glory and all this in this world. Choose the less, and then the Lord will raise you up. I often talk about D.L. Moody. When he started, he was so on fire for God, but he really had hardly any biblical understanding. He didn't have much natural education either. He couldn't read that well and all these things. So he said, I really want to do something. And the church and the leaders of the church, understandably, would say, well, right now, but he goes, but I'm so on fire. And they're like, well, right now, maybe, it's not time for that. Even Paul had to go away and learn some things. But D.L. Moody said, I'm going to find something to do. So he goes and he starts going to this place in Chicago that used to be called the Sands. Of course, this is in the 1800s. They said hardly any other, and he went not even to the adults. He went to the children of these people, these desperately poor alcoholics and drug addicts, and said all these children, hardly any of them had, kind of like today, had a two-parent home. Then their parents were abusive to them. They were all starving and living in rags. They were looked at like animals. But he went there. And he began to start like a children's ministry in this old abandoned building. They said it was an abandoned building and it was like an old abandoned saloon or something like that. But he began to host this, and it became like a worldwide known what this man is doing with these hundreds of little children. And I like it because this one man, he was a minister or something somewhere, and he said, I went to visit because I'd heard of this place. It was just a wild place almost, but he let the kids not be wild, but he realized sometimes they have their children, they have pent up energy, you got to let them loose. And, this is like a restrictive society at the time, those kind of places. And, but he said, I went in and there's D.L. Moody, and there's just this old, like single candle. It's dark, and he's in his arms, he has this little poor black child, and he's trying to read chapter in the book of John, he's really stumbling over the words because he's trying to read and he probably can't see it very well, just like this one candlelight. And all these kids are surrounded, making noises. And he looked up at D.L. Moody, who at the time, who was D.L. Moody? He was just another man at the time who wasn't famous. But this preacher looked and said, God, if you can use this man, you can use anybody. If you're going to use this kind of place. And he said, D.L. Moody just looked up and had tears in his eyes, like, I so want to do something for the Lord. Please pray for me. Because he looked at this man with respect. You're, an educated, godly man. Could you pray for me that God will somehow use me? And look what he did. This humble man, God lifted him up to become maybe the most famous preacher ever in American history. So this is what we're talking about. In verse 12, then he also said to him who invited him, when you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. For you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. So I really like that. He said, don't seek to invite the kings and all these things. Seek to invite the people who are never invited, the poor, the maimed, and all these things. Give honor to them. And he's trying to teach us a lesson. Don't always look, because then I'll get something. I'll get some kind of, even if they don't pay me monetarily, I'll get respect. Ooh, you had the king over, ooh, that's fancy. No, he's saying, invite the poor, the maimed, the ones, the people are kind of like, what in the world? Because Jesus himself ate with the sinners, but he also ate with the saints. So God, help us, use us, help us be wise, and let us be like this. Let's seek the lowest part. Just do our little part and don't look for receiving glory. But let us all invite to the table. And as I close this, I think of, sometimes in school, at lunchtime, you feel awkward because I was a quiet kid. Who do I sit with? Who do I sit with? And so many kids, it's a kind of historical thing. You see it all over the place in shows and everything, but you can't sit here. Don't sit with me. I want to sit with my friends, but really the Spirit of Jesus is like, that person who's lonely, let them come sit with me. And that's really the spirit we need to have, because you may know what it feels like to be looked at as nothing, to not be invited to sit at the table, but here at his table, all are invited. All he requires is, please put on the wedding guest or a wedding garment. That's what I want. Let's put this on. And, then you are more than welcome to sit at my table. And it's a table that spreads throughout all eternity. So God bless you all. Let us keep that spirit and mind about us today. In Jesus Christ's name,